Introduction to the Galactic Council. In a galaxy teeming with life, where vibrant stars twinkled against a backdrop of infinite darkness, a momentous gathering was taking place. The Galactic Council, prestigious assembly of representatives from various planets, convened within the Grand Hall of Zoreth Prime. This majestic structure, adorned with shimmering crystals and intricate alien designs, was a testament to civilizations that had thrived for millennia. Today, it would witness an event that would change perceptions across species. The gathering begins. As delegates from diverse worlds took their seats, an air of anticipation filled the chamber. Among them was Chris Adams, 32-year-old human xenobiologist known for his groundbreaking research on interspecies communication. His presence at such a high-profile summit was unusual. Humans were often viewed as newcomers in galactic affairs. Yet here he was, representing Earth, a planet still grappling with its own challenges while striving for acceptance among advanced civilizations. Chris scanned the room, noting the varied expressions on the faces around him. Some were curious, others skeptical. The Zorek delegation, with their elongated limbs and shimmering scales, whispered among themselves, casting wary glances at Chris. Meanwhile, towering Drawn warriors sat stoically at their posts, their fierce eyes betraying nothing but an underlying tension. The Hellhound's arrival. As discussions began about trade agreements and intergalactic cooperation, a hush fell over the crowd when a massive enclosure was wheeled into view. Within it was a Drawn hellhound, a creature renowned for its unparalleled ferocity and lethal prowess. Its 6 muscular legs rippled with power beneath a coat of dark fur that seemed to absorb light itself. With razor-sharp claws and fiery eyes that glowed like embers, it was a living weapon feared across galaxies. The Hellhound's handlers struggled to maintain control over it as it thrashed against its restraints. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates recalled tales of this apex predator tearing through enemies with ruthless efficiency. Chris felt his heart race. He had studied these creatures extensively, but had never seen one up close, let alone in such an agitated state. A moment of chaos. Suddenly, without warning, the Hellhound broke free from its handler's grasp. It lunged toward the nearest delegate, a Zorek child who had wandered too close to its enclosure. Time seemed to slow as gasps filled the air. Horror etched itself onto every face in attendance. Chris's instincts kicked in. He couldn't stand idly by while chaos erupted around him. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice cutting through the rising panic as he stepped forward. The council members turned to him, their expressions a mix of disbelief and fear. What could one human do against such raw power? Chris's decision. In that split second, Chris made a choice that would reverberate throughout the galaxy. He would not let fear dictate his actions. He remembered his studies on animal behavior and how empathy could sometimes bridge even the widest gaps between species. "Please, let me try," he implored, his eyes locked onto those of the Hellhound. To everyone's astonishment, instead of attacking him outright, the creature paused, its fiery gaze flickering with curiosity rather than aggression. The chamber erupted into chaos again, as delegates shouted warnings and objections. "This is madness," exclaimed one Zorek counselor. "You'll doom us all." But another voice rose above the fray. A Kree ambassador who had witnessed Chris's courage before. "Wait, perhaps he can calm it," she suggested tentatively. A risk worth taking. With every ounce of courage he could muster, Chris approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. He spoke softly, trying to connect with this magnificent beast that had been reduced to a mere weapon by its captors. "Easy now," he murmured gently, inching closer while maintaining eye contact with those fiery orbs. "I'm here to help you." As he neared, he noticed something lodged painfully in the Hellhound's gums. Jagged tooth that must have been causing immense discomfort. Understanding dawned upon him. This creature was not simply an embodiment of rage. It was suffering. The council members watched in stunned silence as Chris knelt beside the enclosure, his heart pounding not just from fear but from an overwhelming sense of purpose. He knew he had only moments before chaos reigned again if he didn't act decisively. A shift in perception. Just then, as if sensing his intent to help rather than harm, the hellhound's posture shifted slightly. It relaxed ever so slightly under his gaze, as he prepared himself for what lay ahead. Both physically and emotionally, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted dramatically from one of impending doom to cautious curiosity about this unlikely interaction between human and predator. The Galactic Council held its breath collectively. They were witnessing something unprecedented. Human daring to reach out to one of nature's most fearsome creations in hopes of forging an unexpected bond amidst chaos. This sets up an engaging beginning for your story while adhering closely to your guidelines regarding tone and content length. The Hellhound's fury. The atmosphere in the Galactic Council chamber had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a tense diplomatic meeting was now a scene of utter chaos. The drawn hellhound, once a symbol of primal ferocity, had become the center of attention, not just for its fearsome reputation, but for the unexpected bond forming between it and Chris Adams, the human xenobiologist. As Chris knelt beside the creature, the council members were torn between horror and fascination. The beast unleashed. Suddenly, the hellhound let out a deep, guttural growl that reverberated off the walls of the chamber. Its fiery eyes locked onto Chris, who remained calm despite the palpable tension in the air. The creature's muscles rippled beneath its dark fur as it prepared to pounce. But Chris held his ground. He could see the pain in its eyes, a mixture of rage and suffering from the jagged tooth that had caused it so much distress. "Stay back," shouted Croc, the drawn caretaker, his voice laced with panic. "It's going to attack." But Chris didn't flinch. Instead, he focused on the hellhound, speaking softly as he reached out a hand. "I'm here to help you," he said again, his voice steady and soothing. The creature hesitated, its growl fading into a low whimper as it sensed Chris's genuine intent. A moment of connection. As if time had slowed, Chris felt an inexplicable connection forming between them. He could sense the hellhound's fear and confusion. It was not merely a beast of destruction but a creature trapped in its own pain. The council members watched in stunned silence as Chris continued to speak to the beast, his words weaving an invisible thread of empathy. With each passing second, Chris's heart raced, not from fear but from hope. He knew that if he could reach this creature, perhaps he could change perceptions about humans and their place in the galaxy. The council was already skeptical of his presence. If he could show them that compassion could transcend species barriers, it might open doors for future cooperation. The handler's desperation. Croc's face twisted in disbelief as he watched Chris interact with the hellhound. "This is madness," he shouted, frustration boiling over. "You're risking everything. That creature is a weapon. It cannot be tamed." "Perhaps not," Chris replied calmly without breaking eye contact with the hellhound. "But it can be understood." He carefully moved closer, mindful of every movement as he reached for his medical kit. The other delegates began to murmur amongst themselves. Some were horrified at what they perceived as reckless bravery. Others were intrigued by this human who dared to approach such a dangerous predator. Zephyr, a Kree ambassador who had been observing closely, raised his voice above the din. "Let him try," Zephyr urged. "If we are to coexist in this galaxy, we must learn to understand each other, starting with this beast." An unlikely alliance. Chris nodded at Zephyr's words and turned back to face the hellhound. "I'm going to help you," he reassured it once more. Slowly, he opened his medical kit and pulled out a pair of tweezers designed for delicate operations. The hellhound's eyes flickered with uncertainty but did not retreat. It seemed to sense that Chris posed no threat. Instead, there was something calming about his presence. Taking a deep breath, Chris leaned closer to examine the creature's mouth while maintaining a gentle tone. As he worked meticulously to extract the jagged tooth lodged painfully in its gums, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over him. This was more than just a medical procedure. It was an act of defiance against centuries of fear and misunderstanding between species. The Council's reaction. Meanwhile, the Council members were divided in their opinions. Some argued vehemently against Chris's actions while others began to see merit in his approach. A Zoric counselor stood up angrily. "This is an outrage. We cannot allow this human to interfere with our creatures. What if it turns on him?" She gestured wildly toward Chris and the hellhound. But another voice chimed in, an elder from one of the lesser-known races who had witnessed countless conflicts throughout history. "Sometimes strength lies not in power, but in compassion," he said thoughtfully. "Perhaps this human is showing us what we have forgotten." As Chris finally extracted the tooth and tossed it aside, he felt a wave of relief wash over him, and then something extraordinary happened. Transformation begins. The hellhound let out a low whine before suddenly shifting its demeanor entirely. It stood up straighter and looked around as if awakening from a long slumber filled with pain and rage. To everyone's astonishment, it began to play with a rubber ball that had been left nearby. A stark contrast to its previous ferocity. Chris watched with wide eyes as the hellhound rolled on its back, paws flailing playfully in the air while its tail wagged furiously, a sign of joy that no one had ever thought possible from such an apex predator. The council chamber fell silent once more as delegates processed this unexpected turn of events. "Is this truly happening?" whispered one Zorak delegate incredulously. "Yes," replied Zephyr softly, his gaze fixed on Chris and the now playful hellhound. "It seems our friend here has found relief. A new understanding." In that moment, something shifted within the council chamber. Realization that perhaps there was more to these creatures than their reputation suggested. The drawing hellhound had transformed from an embodiment of violence into a creature capable of joy and connection. Chris stood up slowly, feeling both exhilarated and exhausted by what had just transpired. He turned toward the council members who were now watching him with expressions ranging from awe to confusion. "Compassion can change everything," he said firmly but gently. "If we can understand each other, if we can see beyond our fears, we might find ways to cooperate that we never imagined possible." The murmurs among council members grew louder as they began discussing what they had just witnessed. A human forging an unlikely friendship with one of their most feared creatures. New debate begins. As discussions resumed around him, Chris felt both encouraged and anxious about what lay ahead. While some delegates began advocating for further study into interspecies communication methods inspired by his actions, others remained staunchly opposed, believing that taming such creatures was against drawn tradition. Croc stood firm against any notion of cooperation with humans or altering their ways regarding hellhounds. "This is not how we do things," he declared vehemently. But even amidst dissenting voices emerged those willing to consider change, those who saw potential for unity rather than division through understanding and empathy. Chris knew this was only the beginning. Challenges lay ahead as they navigated through differing beliefs about compassion versus tradition within their respective cultures. Conclusion. A path forward. As night fell over Zorith Prime, and discussions continued late into the evening hours filled with heated debates among various species about what they had just witnessed, the possibility of cooperation hung delicately in balance like stars scattered across an endless sky waiting for someone brave enough to reach out and connect them together. Chris's heart swelled with hope for what lay ahead. A chance not only for himself, but also for humanity to prove its worth among galactic civilizations through acts driven by kindness rather than conquest or fear alone. Would this moment spark lasting change? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: humanity had made its mark on history today. One friendship at a time, and perhaps even more importantly, had opened doors toward understanding across vast distances between worlds previously thought irreconcilable forevermore. Bold decision. The council chamber buzzed with heated discussions, the atmosphere thick with tension and uncertainty. What had started as a diplomatic summit had quickly devolved into a battleground of ideas and beliefs. Chris Adams stood at the center of this storm, his heart racing as he grappled with the implications of his actions. The drawn hellhound, now calm and playing with a rubber ball, had shifted the focus of the council from fear to curiosity, but the question remained, what would happen next? The weight of responsibility. Chris felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had taken a risk by intervening with the hellhound, and now he was at the center of a fierce debate among some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. As voices rose and fell around him, he realized that this was more than just about one creature. It was about bridging the gap between species and challenging long-held beliefs. Croc, the drawn caretaker, glared at Chris with disdain. "You've endangered us all," he spat. "What if that beast turns on you again? We cannot afford to show weakness." A bold decision. The council chamber buzzed with heated discussions, the atmosphere thick with tension and uncertainty. What had started as a diplomatic summit had quickly devolved into a battleground of ideas and beliefs. Chris Adams stood at the center of this storm, his heart racing as he grappled with the implications of his actions. The drawn hellhound, now calm and playing with a rubber ball, had shifted the focus of the council from fear to curiosity. But the question remained, what would happen next? The weight of responsibility. Chris felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had taken a risk by intervening with the hellhound, and now he was at the center of a fierce debate among some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. As voices rose and fell around him, he realized that this was more than just about one creature. It was about bridging the gap between species and challenging long-held beliefs. Croc, the drawn caretaker, glared at Chris with disdain. "You've endangered us all," he spat. "What if that beast turns on you again? We cannot afford to show weakness." But Chris stood firm. "It's not weakness to show compassion," he replied, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "If we want to coexist, we must learn to understand each other. This hellhound is not just a weapon, it's a living being capable of feeling pain and joy." A divided council. The council members were divided. Some nodded in agreement with Chris, while others remained skeptical. Zephyr, the Kree ambassador who had supported Chris earlier, spoke up again. "We have witnessed something extraordinary today," he said passionately. "This human has shown us that empathy can lead to understanding. Perhaps we should explore this further." But Croc was unyielding. "You would put our entire civilization at risk for a fleeting moment of compassion. The drawn do not coddle their beasts. We respect their nature." Chris could see that Croc's words resonated with many in the room. The drawn had built their culture around strength and survival, and any perceived weakness could undermine their authority. Yet Chris knew that change was necessary if they were to move forward. The call for unity. As discussions continued, Chris felt a surge of determination. He stepped forward once more, drawing attention to himself amidst the chaos. "What if we could learn from this experience?" he proposed. "What if we could create a program that fosters understanding between our species? Imagine a world where humans and drawn work together to train these creatures, where we can learn from each other's strengths." His words hung in the air like an unspoken promise, igniting sparks of hope among some council members while others remained skeptical. The idea of cooperation was radical but intriguing. Could they really bridge such vast differences? "Perhaps it is time to consider new approaches," Zephyr added thoughtfully. "We live in an age where collaboration can yield extraordinary results." A test of trust. Chris's proposal sparked heated debates once again, but this time there was an undercurrent of curiosity that hadn't been present before. The council members began discussing practicalities, how they could implement such a program and what it would entail. Croc remained unconvinced but found himself outnumbered as more voices joined in support of Chris's vision for unity. "If we are to pursue this path," Croc finally conceded begrudgingly, We must ensure that any human involved understands our ways and respects them. Chris nodded vigorously. Absolutely. I'm willing to learn everything I can about Dron culture and how best to work with these creatures. A new alliance forms. As discussions continued late into the night, Chris felt a sense of camaraderie forming among those who supported his vision for cooperation. They began drafting plans for a joint training program, a way for humans and Dron to learn from each other while fostering mutual respect. The hellhound watched curiously from its enclosure as delegates debated passionately about its future, a creature once seen only as a weapon now becoming a symbol of hope for unity. Finally, after hours of discussion, an agreement was reached. They would establish an interspecies training initiative focusing on understanding and empathy toward Dron hellhounds and other apex predators throughout the galaxy. Moment of reflection. As Chris stepped outside into the cool night air after the meeting concluded, he took a moment to reflect on what had transpired that day. He had faced down fear and uncertainty, not just for himself but for an entire species, and emerged with something extraordinary: hope. He looked up at the stars twinkling above Zorith Prime, feeling small yet significant in this vast universe filled with possibilities. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to connect with others across boundaries, whether it be physical or cultural. Chris, Zephyr called out as he approached him from behind, breaking his reverie. You did well today. Thanks, Chris replied with a smile. It feels like we're on the brink of something amazing. The path ahead. As they walked together toward their quarters for rest after such an eventful day, Chris couldn't help but feel excitement bubbling within him about what lay ahead. A chance not only to forge new alliances but also to redefine humanity's place among galactic civilizations. In this moment filled with possibility, Chris understood that true strength came not from power or dominance, but from compassion, the ability to reach out across divides and build bridges where walls once stood. Little did he know that this journey would lead him down paths he never imagined, filled with challenges that would test his resolve even further, but also opportunities for growth and understanding beyond anything he could foresee. With newfound determination fueling his spirit, Chris Adams prepared himself for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace both triumphs and trials alike as he ventured forth into uncharted territories alongside allies both familiar and foreign alike. This part continues the story rhythm while maintaining engagement and simplicity as per your instructions. Unexpected friendship. As the debates continued to swirl around the council chamber, Chris Adams felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. The transformation of the Dron hellhound from a ferocious beast into a playful creature had sparked a glimmer of understanding among the council members. Yet the path forward was still fraught with challenges. Would they embrace this new perspective, or would fear and tradition hold them back? The council's decision. After hours of heated discussions, the council finally reached a consensus. They would establish an interspecies training initiative, focusing on understanding and empathy toward Dron hellhounds and other apex predators. Chris felt a surge of relief wash over him. This was a significant step toward bridging the gap between humans and Dron. The council decided to appoint Chris as the lead coordinator for this initiative, recognizing his unique position as both a human and a xenobiologist. You have shown us that compassion can lead to understanding, said Zephyr, his voice steady. We trust you to guide this program. Chris nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. I will do my best to honor this opportunity, he replied earnestly. Together, we can create something remarkable. A new beginning. In the days that followed, Chris worked tirelessly alongside Dron experts to develop the training program. They designed workshops that would allow humans to learn about Dron culture and vice versa. The goal was simple yet profound: to foster mutual respect and understanding between species. The hellhound became an integral part of this initiative. As it played with Chris and participated in training sessions, it showcased its intelligence and playful nature, further dispelling fears surrounding its kind. Council members began to see the hellhound not just as a weapon, but as a potential ally. Building bridges. As word spread about the initiative, interest grew among various alien species. Delegates from different planets expressed their desire to participate in the program, eager to learn from both humans and Drawn. The council chamber buzzed with excitement as plans were laid out for a grand interspecies summit where representatives could come together to share knowledge and experiences. Chris felt invigorated by this newfound enthusiasm. He organized workshops that included hands-on training with hellhounds, allowing participants to bond with these magnificent creatures while learning about their behavior and needs. Challenges arise. However, not everyone was pleased with this shift in perspective. Croc remained staunchly opposed to the initiative, believing that taming such beasts would undermine Drawn traditions. He rallied support among traditionalists who feared that embracing compassion would lead to weakness. "Compassion is not our way," Croc declared during one particularly heated meeting. "We must remember our roots. Strength is what has kept us alive." Chris listened patiently but felt compelled to respond. "Strength can also come from understanding," he argued passionately. "By working together, we can find new ways to thrive without sacrificing our identities." An unlikely ally. Amidst the discord, an unexpected ally emerged. One of Croc's own kin named Rena. She had always been fascinated by Chris's approach and believed in the potential for cooperation between their species. Rena stepped forward during one meeting, her voice calm yet firm. "Croc," she said gently, "I understand your concerns, but we cannot ignore what we have seen with our own eyes. The hellhound is not merely a beast. It is capable of so much more when treated with respect." Her words resonated with many in the room, including some who had previously sided with Croc. Slowly but surely, attitudes began to shift as more voices joined Rena's call for unity. Turning point. As weeks turned into months, the interspecies training program flourished. Humans and Drawn worked side by side, forging bonds through shared experiences and mutual respect. The hellhound became a symbol of this newfound friendship, its playful antics bringing laughter and joy to all who participated. During one memorable training session, Chris stood before a group of eager participants, both human and Drawn, ready to demonstrate how they could communicate effectively with their hellhounds using body language and vocal cues. "Remember," he instructed them, "patience is key. These creatures are intelligent. They respond best when they feel safe." As he spoke, he noticed Croc watching from the sidelines, his expression unreadable but curious nonetheless. An unexpected challenge. Just when things seemed to be progressing smoothly, an unexpected challenge arose. A group of rogue Drawn warriors opposed to any form of cooperation began sabotaging training sessions, spreading fear among participants by claiming that humans were trying to dominate their culture. Chris felt disheartened, but refused to give up. He organized an emergency meeting with council members and participants alike to address these concerns head-on. "We cannot let fear dictate our actions," he urged passionately during the meeting. "We have come too far to allow a few dissenters to tear us apart." His words struck a chord with many present. They rallied together in support of Chris's vision for unity. A show of strength. To demonstrate their commitment to cooperation, Chris proposed hosting an interspecies exhibition, showcasing what they had learned through the program. It would be an opportunity for both humans and Drawn to display their skills while emphasizing their shared values. The council agreed enthusiastically. Preparations began immediately for what would become a historic event, a celebration of friendship between species that had once been at odds. On the day of the exhibition, excitement filled the air as delegates from across the galaxy gathered at Zorath Prime's Grand Arena, a magnificent structure adorned with banners representing various civilizations united under one cause: understanding through compassion. The exhibition day. As Chris stood before the crowd alongside Rena and other representatives from both species, he felt pride swell within him. This was more than just an exhibition. It was proof that change was possible when hearts opened up to new possibilities. The event showcased various demonstrations, from drawn warriors displaying their combat skills alongside human strategists presenting innovative tactics honed through collaboration, to heartwarming moments where hellhounds played joyfully with children from different races. Cheers erupted throughout the arena amidst laughter and camaraderie shared among attendees. A palpable sense of hope enveloped everyone present, a reminder that compassion could indeed conquer fear. A lasting legacy. In the aftermath of this successful exhibition came renewed commitment among all parties involved. The rogue warriors who had once opposed cooperation began reconsidering their stance after witnessing firsthand how powerful unity could be when forged through understanding rather than conflict. Croc himself approached Chris after the event concluded, his demeanor softened by what he had witnessed throughout those remarkable hours spent together celebrating diversity rather than division. "I see now," Croc admitted quietly but sincerely as he extended his hand toward Chris, gesture signifying newfound respect between them both. That strength lies not only in tradition but also in embracing change. Chris smiled warmly as he shook Croc's hand firmly. It was a moment filled with promise. A pledge forged between two species willing to evolve beyond old fears into something extraordinary together. Conclusion. A new dawn. As time passed following these events, the Interspecies Training Initiative flourished beyond anyone's expectations, creating lasting bonds between humans and Dron, while inspiring other civilizations across galaxies eager for similar connections based on empathy rather than animosity. And so began a new era filled with possibilities where friendship triumphed over fear. A testament reminding all beings across galaxies that even amidst chaos, hope could emerge stronger than ever before. With hearts united under one banner, the galaxy looked forward toward brighter futures filled with collaboration instead of conflict. A legacy born from courage shown by those willing enough to step forward into uncharted territories hand in hand.